back to the Sports 2.0 Network. I'm Jaya Williams, joined with Alec Busse. Alec, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Looking forward to a good show recapping the Olympics.
Definitely. I mean, as we all know, last night marked the official end of the Tokyo Summer Games. So we are here to hit you guys with a little Olympic recap, going over all of Team USA's accomplishments and kind of just reflecting on everything that happened. So to start us off, I think we should talk about one of the more recent things that happened over this weekend. Women's and men's basketball ended up taking home the gold for the U.S. Now, as we all know, the men's team had a bit of a rocky start. It definitely wasn't looking too good for them. They lost a couple exhibition games. They lost to France. It was getting kind of scary. Alec, how are you feeling about Team U.S. before they had won the gold? Were you confident in them the whole time, or were you a little nervous?
I think I look back and think back to those like the prelim games, like the exhibition games before when they lost to, Australia and France, I think, and both kind of pretty ugly losses. And then they get to Tokyo and they lose to France, I think, in their first game. You're thinking, oh no, like maybe this actually isn't an Olympic gold medal good enough team. And think back to how they were able to win it. They beat France in the gold medal game 87-82, and it's definitely not the fashion that we're used to seeing the U.S. men's team kind of dominate with. And I think without Kevin Durant, they might not have won the gold medal. I mean, he finished with 29 points, and I think 6 rebounds in that gold medal game against France. I think he was like 9 of 18 from the field in that game as well. So definitely Kevin Durant deserves that gold medal. He's now probably up there with Carmelo Anthony as one of the greatest men's Olympic basketball players in American history with the accomplishments he has. I think he's the all-time leading scorer now. I think he's got 3 separate gold medals. So Kevin Durant obviously played great for the U.S. throughout this experience. I do think that the idea that the world is catching up to us in basketball is actually a very real thing. I know Kevin Durant kind of said something afterwards about, not really like no one has the skill that we have. And I think in theory that might be true, but it's very clear that the rest of the world is kind of starting to catch up when you just kind of look at the score. And when the U.S. doesn't have their best players, like they didn't in this one, even no LeBron James, no, Anthony Davis wasn't over there, Karl Anthony Towns wasn't over there. So many of our Steph Curry obviously wasn't over there.
Right.
I think we're going to get to a point now in the next 4 to 8 years where we might have to start continually sending our best players if you want to continue to dominate the men's Olympic basketball kind of arena that we've dominated really since 1992 when we put professional players into the Olympics.
Yeah, we haven't really lost since like 2005, I think.
2004, yeah.
Yeah, so it definitely was shocking for the Americans. I'm glad that you brought up the fact that, obviously we weren't seeing a lot of our star players that we're usually used to seeing. I know a lot of fans were just disappointed in all these different people kind of bowing out, and saying that they weren't going to come. But my thing was kind of just like, okay, we still are having, anybody at the NBA level in the U.S., I feel like should have been able to go in and do what we usually do. So it definitely was a surprise. It was very disappointing and kind of weird this year to see us kind of, they're a little bit of a fire under our butt. Usually it's so such an easy kind of thing. But they did manage to come through and get it. You said it yourself. Kevin Durant had a great contribution to that, obviously. Damian Lillard was doing pretty good in a lot of those games as well. But, yeah, I wasn't so sure if they were going to be able to pull it together. I mean, I'm really glad they did. I feel like it would have just been really embarrassing had they not. But, yeah, definitely a different look. I think it was kind of cool to give other athletes, though, a chance to go to the Olympics and represent the U.S. It was kind of refreshing to see some different faces, but not so refreshing when we lost to France. Definitely not. The women's team, though, on the other hand, they also won their 7th consecutive gold medal after beating Japan 90-75. So congratulations to them. Honestly, they impressed me a lot more than the men this year. They honestly were killing it throughout the whole Olympics. Did you have a chance to kind of catch them?
Yeah, I watched them a little bit, and honestly, the whole idea that the world is catching up to us in men's basketball probably has some merit to it. I don't think that's
Yeah.
necessarily true in women's basketball because our
No.
women's team, and they seem to play with kind of like a little bit of an extra chip on the shoulder, maybe a little bit. Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi become 5-time gold medalists. That's pretty incredible when you kind of think about it. I mean, that's a 20-year-long career at a very minimum playing for the Olympic team, and that's an incredible accomplishment in itself. And then Sylvia Fowles earns her 4th gold medal for the women's team. So that's pretty incredible to see 2 or 3 women really kind of continue to carry the torch for the U.S. Olympic team on the women's side. And then, of course, Brianna Stewart's just kind of a tank at this point, and she's one of the best players in the world. But Brittany Griner, I feel like we don't talk about her enough in the WNBA. She scores 30 points, is the record for an American in a gold medal game. So it was really impressive to see the women's team just kind of dominate the entire really medal round, but also the qualifying round of the Olympics.
Definitely. And I feel like it's so cool to see that. And hopefully it will kind of get people more interested in supporting women's basketball in general and the WNBA in general, because clearly, they came hard, and I'm definitely looking forward to just watching the WNBA season as well after seeing all these stars. So very good. And did you get to see them kind of come together, congratulate each other? I loved that Team US support. I'm glad everybody gets to go home with some gold medals.
Did you see the video of them in the locker room afterwards dancing to Cardi B and everything? That video is hilarious. I think I watched it like 4 or 5 times the morning after they had won.
Yes, that video is so precious. It was like trending all night that night. It was so funny. But on a more negative note, unfortunately, a lot of people have also been talking about women's soccer. Unfortunately, they weren't able to win the gold. They took that loss to Canada. What are we thinking about this? How were you disappointed? Were you surprised?
Yeah, it's really weird to imagine the U.S. women's team losing on a national level. I mean, it's definitely not something that we've seen happen a lot, at least in the last couple of years. I think it was Canada's Jessie Fleming. She was able to score on a PK in like the 75th minute or something like that for Canada, which pushed them to a 1-0 lead. And then the U.S. just couldn't come back and win. I think the U.S. ended up getting silver, I believe, in the Olympics. It just probably leaves a bad taste in the mouth of a lot of those women. Obviously, Alex Morgan, Megan Rapinoe, Carly Lloyd, pretty successful women's players throughout their careers. However, I would say that the Olympics doesn't seem to carry the weight that the World Cup does, and I'd have to double check on when the next Women's World Cup is, but the World Cup just seems to have that much more influence on the sport of soccer than the Olympics does. So I do kind of expect the U.S. women to come back in the next year or 2 or 3 years, whatever it is, for the next Women's World Cup, and probably do pretty well on that and potentially get back on track and win another gold medal.
Yeah, and that's the thing. With soccer, the World Cup really is a bigger event as far as that versus the Olympics. I do think they should be proud of their accomplishments. They still made it pretty far. I think it's like the U.S. is just so used to dominating completely in every, whatever, that when we don't get gold, it seems like this huge thing, when it's a huge accomplishment just to get, as far as we did. And we do need to start giving other countries, more credit. Like you saw with the men's basketball, where you're so used to dominating. Like other countries have some amazing athletes, okay? And I think it's definitely important to recognize that as well. The World Cup will be a great chance for them to redeem themselves. I'm looking forward to seeing that, and hopefully they're still in some high spirits. But, Team USA still accomplished a lot despite winning gold. I always say, I feel like gold, a medal is a medal, and winning that at the Olympic level is amazing. Like a lot of people have been giving Simone Biles a little bit of crud for getting bronze, when it's like, first of all, she wasn't even going to come at all. So you guys should be grateful that she, was able to even do the balance beam, and winning bronze is no easy task, so it's not always just about getting the gold medal, but obviously it would have been amazing to see women's soccer do that. However, there were a lot of people that did get the gold for us. Like I just mentioned, obviously that was a huge headline throughout all of this going on was Simone Biles taking that time out for her mental health. And a lot of people were just like, what's going to happen next? Who's going to step up to the plate? And it ended up being a young lady named Sunisa Lee. I absolutely love this girl. She's been a joy to watch perform, and this was her first Olympic Games. She's the first Hmong American to represent the U.S. in the Olympics, which is obviously huge for representation. And at just 17 years old, she took home the gold. 18 years old, excuse me. She took home the gold and did an absolutely beautiful, beautiful performance in the individual all around. Did you get to watch her this year?
Yeah, I did. And honestly, I think her kind of, carrying the weight of the Simone Biles situation was a really cool thing for the U.S. women's gymnastics team. She, everyone kind of looked at Simone Biles as, this kind of like veteran captain of the team. She looks like she's kind of the one who's going to carry them to gold. And I don't think there's any dispute that she's still the greatest gymnast in the world when she's mentally there and she's in the right headspace and all of those things. And hopefully she's getting back to that now that she's back in the U.S. and she's been back in her home of Houston, Texas with her family and with her boyfriend. You like to think that now SUNI Lee can kind of be the next one to carry that torch for the U.S. women's gymnastics team. And I know that the U.S. women's team didn't actually end up winning the team all-around gold, and that had a lot to do with Simone Biles not being able to compete. But SUNI Lee had no, reason to be ashamed of herself. I mean, she was great in the beam. That's her best event. She was pretty solid on the floor, too, I believe. And then she did pretty well on the bars, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so, seeing her kind of take the face of maybe the future face, maybe, I guess, of the U.S. women's gymnastics program is a pretty influential role. It's definitely a sport that kind of captivates America every 4 years or around that time, right, when the Olympics come around.
Right.
And I think there's a very real chance that she's going to be back in the 2024 Olympics, because now Summer Olympics are only 3 years away again, with COVID kind of pushing them back to 2021. And you know how it works with gymnastics. Your body just ages so fast because it's so hard on your joints and your ligaments and all of those things. It's such a demanding sport on the body. So SUNI Lee might actually be back in 2024 for the Olympics. And I know Simone Biles hasn't necessarily ruled it out completely. She'd be really old if she were to come back. I think she'd be 27. So maybe she doesn't come back and compete in like the individual all around. Maybe she just comes back and does floor, or comes back and does vault. I think those are two of her more favorite events.
Yeah.
She also really likes the beam. But I think SUNI Lee's got a good opportunity to kind of be like the new face of the U.S. Women's Gymnastics program. And that's something that I think is really important for U.S. Gym kind of moving forward. I know Simone Biles took a lot of pride in, being the one kind of, I guess, survivor maybe, or victim. Survivor is probably a better word to use, of the Larry Nassar situation that was still competing. And she was kind of carrying a lot of weight that went along with that. She kind of mentioned that a couple times. And now hopefully the U.S. can kind of continue to grow from that situation, but continue to grow with new faces and faces that can carry the sport and carry the organization forward. And SUNI Lee has the ability to be at the forefront of that.
Yeah, she absolutely does. I mean, I think her future is incredibly bright, especially, I can't even imagine the pressure that was on her and what this means. Because, SUNI herself has been through a lot of emotional and physical challenges to get to where she is today. And I think a lot of people, don't even realize that. She battled multiple foot injuries, and she lost 2 family members due to COVID-19, just prior to these Olympics. She also struggled with a terrible accident that left her father paralyzed. So if you want to talk about mental health issues, I'm sure she had a lot of, things that she was dealing with as well. And despite all of those hurdles, she managed to excel in these Olympic Games, and her performance has been really inspiring and historic. And while I do commend, Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka and all those other athletes that are kind of putting their mental health first and putting that at the forefront, it is also really cool to see people like SUNI kind of overcome her challenges and come out greater as a result of that. And I think she's the only one of these Gen Z Olympians that we've seen that have really, really, really bright futures.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so fun and what's so kind of maybe captivating about the Olympics. And I think some of this kind of is connected to college sports as well. And Suni Lee actually is doing something that's really never been done before. She wins an individual all around, and then she goes back, and now she's going to college. And I mean, who's going to knock her off, right?
No, right?
Right? Over the next couple of years. But that's something that's never been done. And to take this conversation in a different way, and you've spent a lot of time doing NIL stuff with different conversations with athletes. I think a major concern a lot of people have with name, image, likeness is, the ability for the non-football, non-men's basketball athletes to be successful and make a living and make some extra money off to the side. Suni Lee's going to have no problem with that. Caleb Dressel is going to have no problem with that at Florida. And that's a great platform that the Olympics provides a lot of, not just American athletes, but I think eventually athletes across the world as more athletes continue to kind of capitalize off their name, image, and likeness. And Suni Lee's definitely going to be a great situation to do that now that she's going to college. And I think you're going to see her in a lot of different places on social media doing a lot of different fun things, whether she's marketing on social media or she's saying, hey, this is like the leotard I wear, or these are the wrist.
Whatever energy drink they want her drinking, whatever outfit they want her in, she's going to be there. She's going to be there front and center.
And she's got that perfect mentality, right? She's got such a pretty smile. She's got the right kind of energy. We all saw the videos of her dancing around in the hallway afterwards. Like, those are things that are attractive to name, image, likeness, and she's going to do very well for that. And I'm super excited to see where we end up seeing her in the next couple of years before the next Olympics.
Definitely. Name and image likeness is just such huge history that happened over this summer. And it's really cool that we're kind of in the age where we can really witness this firsthand. It's just going to be interesting to see how this unfolds. But like you said, it is really important for us to recognize all athletes getting a chance to profit off of their talents in sports, especially women's. It's not always just about the football players and the basketball players. So definitely seeing how this develops going forward is going to be really, really cool. But going back to some more of these Olympic stories, I know I have a couple that I just really love, but I want to ask you first, did you have any stories that just really stood out to you? Any favorite headlines?
Yeah, there's one in particular that really kind of stands out to me. Raven Saunders, she was a thrower for the U.S. track team, and she's had such an incredible story, an incredible, I guess, kind of overcoming story. She grew up, she's gay, she's Black. She went to Ole Miss, which is obviously a kind of maybe one of the more difficult places.
In the Bible Belt.
Yeah, with those kind of, personality traits, it's an area and a lot of things that makes that a little bit more difficult. And there's definitely people in those areas that are still very accepting of those kind of things. I'm not just trying to generalize that entire area, but not only in addition to those things, and those things are obviously very tough for a lot of people to deal with, those things actually led her to considering committing suicide. And that's obviously something that's very difficult for a lot of people to talk about. And it's definitely something that's very difficult for individuals to kind of accept themselves. And she was able to overcome that, and she was able to get a silver medal in the Olympics. And just what an incredible kind of story of overcoming your demons and putting your demons in the past. And that's just such an incredibly powerful thing. And it's so rewarding to kind of see someone be able to overcome so many difficult things in their life to achieve such a big goal. It's something that just kind of put me at a loss of words in a way to see her kind of be able to accomplish the things that she was able to do.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of my favorite things about these Olympics in general has just been all of the new representation that we've seen. And Raven Saunders is definitely a huge example of that. Again, mental health, a huge thing, and kind of being able to overcome those types of obstacles is really, really inspiring. I don't know if you caught this, but after she had won, she went and did an X symbol, and there's like this famous photo that was trending of her doing this, and everyone was like, what is that about? Like, what is she doing? She came out and said that represented the meeting of the oppressed, being a Black person, being a woman, and being, gay. She's definitely had experiences with oppression, and I feel like it was really beautiful that she went and did that symbol, because it kind of it was a symbol of her overcoming those types of things. And that's really, really impressive, to overcome those types of obstacles when the world is constantly telling you no and trying to shut you down, that she can still come here and accomplish something amazing for Team USA. So that was awesome. And it actually reminds me a little bit of Lydia Jacoby's story, obviously not in the same way, but just in the kind of the sense of kind of achieving the impossible, overcoming your obstacles. You know, Lydia Jacoby, she's a 17-year-old swimmer from Alaska, and this year she became the first Alaskan to make the U.S. Olympic swim team, and also the first Alaskan swimmer to win an Olympic gold medal in her first ever Olympics, which is really, really crazy. She won in a very tight race, but I think what's really interesting about her story is that growing up in Alaska, there was one Olympic-sized swimming pool in her entire neighborhood, you know? So it's kind of just like, what are the odds that some teenage girl from Alaska would be able to come here and achieve something so amazing? I mean, I think Alaska is obviously definitely not a swim state, and the pool, the one Olympic-sized pool, was 120 miles away from her high school. So the entire community kind of was joining together to witness and celebrate this kind of historic performance that she put on. And I think that's really inspiring too, in a totally different way. But if you look at the principle of just overcoming obstacles and achieving something that, you know, isn't very likely, or the world would probably tell you isn't very likely, is really, really inspiring to me.
Yeah, I remember watching that actual race. And she beats Lily King, when that's like a big deal in itself, obviously. She's been one of the bigger faces of U.S. women's swim over the last 4 or 5 years, along with Katie Ledecky, of course. But I remember seeing her face after she did that, and she was like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe I actually just, was it an Olympic record or world record that she broke? It was a personal record, at least, I think. You know, seeing her reaction to that was incredible. And then obviously they're showing the video of like the community center in Alaska and showing the reaction of her family. And those are just such cool reactions to see, especially the one in Alaska. I mean, I feel like that's kind of one of the lasting images of these Olympics, was seeing all of those, you know, Alaskans and all of those people from their hometown kind of celebrating, jumping up and down. So that's a real cool thing to just kind of see and witness, I guess. So that one's definitely up there. Just in general, I just think the Olympics does such a good job of shining a light on so many different fun stories that don't always get the most notoriety or most attention, just because they just don't play sports that are on TV all the time, right? You don't turn on Sports Center and see them talking about women's gymnastics, or, you know, shot put, or even more popular sports like track and field at the Olympics, or volleyball. Like the U.S. women's volleyball team won gold as well. And you don't see them talking about those sports all the time on Sports Center. So to see Sports Center kind of shine some light on these athletes and these sports, I think that's what kind of really makes the Olympics so special, is that there's just an ability to kind of not have an acceptance for it, but kind of shine a greater light on the entire world of sports, and not just the big four in like American society being football, baseball, basketball, and hockey.
Absolutely. I think that's one of my favorite things. And these stories, especially for these young women, I feel like that's what being an American is really all about. Like, I think they did a great job choosing these athletes to come represent us, because it shows, you know, Lydia Jacoby, SUNI Lee, Raven Saunders, whatever athlete you're thinking of, they're all completely different, have completely different stories and different backgrounds. And I think that's a really cool thing about the U.S. is that, you know, we're kind of known as the land of opportunity. So it's really cool to see all of these people get those opportunities and make history for us. And just kind of recapping the achievements of the U.S., although, you know, we may not have dominated in certain sports the way we're used to, or, you know, may have lost here and there, we still did have an amazing overall performance. In just the final day, yesterday on Sunday, the U.S. ended up winning the most gold medals on the final day. They won a total of 39 gold medals, with China right behind us with 38. Japan came in third with 27. And in the Summer Games overall, the U.S. won the most medals as well. We won 113 medals total. Really, really great accomplishment. China had 88, and Russia took home 71 in third place. But the Team USA is definitely still in full storm, and I definitely don't think we've seen the last of a lot of these incredible athletes. So I'm really proud of just the achievements. It's always sad for the Olympics to be over, especially now that basketball season's over, but at least we have some football and some baseball to look forward to back in the US. Any last thoughts on anything going on with the Olympics and our achievements?
No, it's just really cool to see the U.S. continue to do well in the Summer Olympics because we don't always win the medal count in the Winter Olympics. A lot of the U.S. isn't cold enough for us to win the Winter Olympics.
Right.
But yeah, it's really cool. I love the Olympics. I'm not going to be like the type of person who gets Olympic fever every 4 years or every 2 years and just can't get away from the TV. I do enjoy the Olympics. It's just really – I like the Olympics. I like the culture of it. I think – and I know COVID numbers aren't doing great right now, so what I'm about to say might not always make the most sense. But the Olympics kind of felt like the world was kind of coming together in a point. After the last year and how difficult 2020 was with the virus, it kind of felt like we were maybe starting to get to a turning point and things kind of starting to get better. And hopefully we're able to get to a point where we're able to continue to kind of get back on track, maybe here a little bit in the next couple of weeks or months or whatever. And we can really kind of kick this thing to the curb once and for all. But hopefully the Olympics kind of just gives another reason as to how the world can come together and accomplish these different goals that we should have together.
Yeah, definitely. I think even though we may not have been able to have fans, just knowing that people from all around the world are watching and people from all around the world are representing their countries is definitely something to celebrate and to be really proud of. So at least this time we don't have to wait 4 years till the next one. We get a little shortcut of 3. And yeah, it's kind of crazy. We'll be talking about this again until 2024, but I'm definitely glad that we got the opportunity to witness this and to be able to talk about it. It's pretty cool. But with all that being said, I think that we have gotten you guys as up to date as we possibly can with this Olympic recap. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the Sports 2.0 network down below and be sure to tune in again throughout this week. We've got a lot of cool shows coming up for you guys. But yes, I'm Jaya Williams. Alec, thank you for joining me, and we will go ahead and see you guys next time. Thanks for listening.